It was a few days to Christmas in the small Nigerian town of Ogoja. The air was filled with the sweet smells of delicious delicacies cooking in every household. People were busy preparing for the festive season, cooking and baking all sorts of tasty treats. In this town, it was a tradition for neighbors to share food and drinks with each other during Christmas and New Year. Everyone looked forward to this time of year, not just for the celebrations, but also for the opportunity to bond with their neighbors and share in the joy of the season. In one of the houses on the street, a woman named Madam Aji was busy cooking up a storm in her kitchen. She was famous for her big pot of stew that she would cook every Christmas, and people would come from all over the town to taste her delicious cooking. But what people didn't know was that Madam Aji had a rather unusual way of preparing her food. She had a habit of spitting into the pot of stew before serving it to her neighbors. This had been going on for years, and no one suspected a thing. Madam Aji would lovingly serve the stew to her neighbors, who would then praise her for her delicious cooking. But little did they know, they were eating food that had been contaminated with Madam Aji's saliva. As the day went on, the smell of Madam Aji's stew wafted through the streets, enticing everyone with its delicious aroma. People's stomachs were growling with anticipation, and they couldn't wait to taste Madam Aji's famous cooking. But one person was not so enthusiastic about Madam Aji's cooking. A young girl named Noma had always been suspicious of Madam Aji's food. She had heard rumors that Madam Aji was not the cleanest person, and she had always been hesitant to eat her food. Neoma's mother had always told her to be polite and respectful to Madam Aji, but Neoma couldn't shake off the feeling that something was not right. She decided to sneak into Madam Aji's kitchen to see how she made her famous stew. As she watched from behind the door, she saw Madam Aji spit into the pot of stew. Neoma was horrified and couldn't believe what she was seeing. She quickly ran out of the kitchen and told her mother what she had seen. Her mother was shocked and immediately warned all their neighbors about Madam Aji's unusual cooking habit. The news spread like wildfire, and soon everyone in the town knew about Madam Aji's spit stew. The people of the town were shocked and disgusted. They couldn't believe that they had been eating Madam Aji's contaminated food for all those years. They demanded answers from Madam Aji, who was forced to confess her strange habits. Madam Aji apologized profusely and promised to change her ways. But the damage had already been done. The townspeople were outraged, and they demanded that Madam Aji be punished for her wrongdoing. The town's elders gathered to discuss the matter and decide on a course of action. They debated long into the night, with some arguing that Madam Aji should be forgiven and others demanding that she be severely punished. Just as it seemed like the elders were about to reach a decision, a strange noise was heard outside. It sounded like footsteps, but they were heavy and deliberate, like someone was trying to make their presence known. The elders looked at each other nervously, wondering who or what could be making the noise. And then, suddenly, the door burst open and a figure loomed in the entrance. It was Madam Aji, but she looked different. Her eyes were glowing with an otherworldly light, and her skin was deathly pale. She looked like she had been possessed by some kind of evil spirit. The elders were shocked and terrified. They didn't know what to do or how to react. And then, Madam Aji spoke, her voice low and menacing. "You should have left me alone," she hissed. "You should have just forgiven me and moved on. But now, it's too late. Now, you'll have to pay the price." She looked at them, and they knew that they were in grave danger. They knew that Madam Aji was no longer human, but a vessel for some kind of evil spirit. And with that, Madam Aji raised her hands, and the room was filled with a blinding light. The elders were consumed by the light, and when it faded, they were gone. And then everything went black. Madam Aji vanished with the elders. The next morning they were nowhere to be found. As the New Year's celebrations approached, the town was still reeling from the mysterious disappearance of the elders. The townspeople were on edge, wondering what had happened to their leaders and who was behind the sinister events. Despite the tension, the tradition of sharing food and drinks during the New Year's celebrations continued. However, the townspeople were now more cautious, remembering the lessons they had learned from Madam Aji's spits too. One of the townspeople, a young woman named Amara, had decided to take matters into her own hands. She had always been suspicious of the food and drinks that were shared during the celebrations, and she had decided to investigate further. Amara started by visiting the houses of her neighbors, under the pretext of wishing them a happy new year. However, her real intention was to snoop around and see if she could find any evidence of foul play as she visited from house to house. Amara noticed that one of her neighbors, a quiet and reserved woman named Mrs. Okoro, seemed particularly nervous and agitated. Amara's instincts told her that something was off, and she decided to investigate further. She snuck into Mrs. Okoro's house, trying not to be seen. What she found shocked her to her core. Mrs. Okoro was busy preparing a big pot of stew, but it was not just any stew. Amara saw that Mrs. Okoro was adding all sorts of strange and suspicious ingredients to the pot, including powders and herbs that Amara did not recognize. Amara's heart was racing as she realized that Mrs. Okoro was planning to poison the townspeople. She knew that she had to act fast, but she also knew that she could not confront Mrs. Okoro alone. Amara quickly ran back to her house, trying not to arouse suspicion. She gathered a few of her trusted friends and told them what she had discovered. Together, they hatched a plan to stop Mrs. Okoro and save the townspeople. As the New Year's celebrations began, Amara and her friends kept a close eye on Mrs. Okoro, watching as she cooked her stew. Amara knew that she had to act fast, before it was too late. Just as Mrs. Okoro was about to serve the stew to the townspeople, Amara and her friends intervened, grabbing the pot and spilling its contents on the ground. The townspeople were shocked and confused, but Amara quickly explained the situation. Telling them about the poison and Mrs. Okoro's sinister plan, the townspeople were outraged, and they quickly turned on Mrs. Okoro, demanding to know why she had tried to poison them. Mrs. Okoro was arrested on the spot, and the townspeople breathed a collective sigh of relief. As the New Year's celebrations continued, the townspeople were more cautious than ever, remembering the lessons they had learned from Madam Aji's spit stew and Mrs. Okoro's poison stew. They knew that they had to be careful about the food and drinks they received from their neighbors, and they vowed to always be vigilant, and so, the town entered the new year with a renewed sense of caution and a deeper appreciation for the importance of looking out for one another. The story of Mrs. Okoro's poison stew would be remembered for years to come, a cautionary tale about the dangers of accepting food and drinks from strangers. But as the townspeople celebrated the start of a new year, they could not shake off the feeling that something was still off. They had solved the mystery of the poison stew, but they knew that there were still many secrets lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered, and so, the town remained on high alert, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that they had to be careful, that they had to look out for one another, and that they had to always be prepared for the unexpected. As the New Year's celebrations came to a close, the townspeople looked to the future with a sense of hope and trepidation. They knew that the year ahead would be filled with challenges and surprises, but they were ready to face whatever came their way. And so, the town entered the new year with a sense of caution and a deeper appreciation for the importance of community and vigilance. They knew that they had to be careful, but they also knew that they were stronger together, and that as long as they looked out for one another, they could face anything that came their way. As you reflect on this story, remember that the line between good and evil is often blurred. Even the most seemingly kind-hearted individuals can have sinister intentions. Stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and always prioritize community and caution. For in the words of the great African proverb, when elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Don't let the elephants in your life catch you off guard. Moral lessons. Be cautious of what you consume. Just like the townspeople, we should be careful of what we eat and drink, especially when it comes from unknown sources. 2. Kindness can be deceiving. Madam Aji's and Mrs. Okoro's actions showed that even the most kind-hearted people can have ulterior motives. 3. Community is key. the townspeople's vigilance and teamwork saved them from disaster, highlighting the importance of looking out for one another. 4. Trust your instincts. Amara's intuition saved the day, demonstrating the value of listening to your inner voice. Food for thought. 1. How far would you go to uncover the truth? Would you take risks like Amara did to expose Mrs. Okoro's sinister plan? 2. Can you really trust your neighbors? The story highlights the importance of being cautious, even when it comes to those closest to us. 3. What secrets are hiding in plain sight? Just like Madam Aji's spit stew and Mrs. Okoro's poison stew, are there secrets in our own lives that we're unaware of? 4. How important is community to you? The story shows that when we work together, we can overcome even the most daunting challenges. Thanks for watching. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section. Kindly like and share this story with your loved ones. Bye for now.